Okay, now that we've got the brakes all disconnected, we can get ahead and remove the front wheel. If you have a BMX bike or some entry-level mountain bikes will have a bolt-on front wheel, so you'll need a 15mm wrench for that. Once you have the front wheel off, if it's a quick release wheel like this one, go ahead and remove the skewer from the axle completely. Be careful not to lose the little centering springs. And we will put the skewer aside along with the wheel. Now let's remove the seat. This one's pretty simple. It's just a quick release. On bikes that don't have a quick release, you obviously will need an Allen wrench for that. A lot of bikes, this seat clamp is pretty secure on there. So I'll go ahead and leave it on there. I'll also go ahead and partially tighten the lever back up. Not fully, but partially. But if when the seat is removed, the seat clamp itself is loose fitting on the frame, I usually go ahead and take that off too, just so it doesn't fall off and get lost at the bottom of the box somewhere. Now let's do our handlebars. This particular bike has these bar ends on, so I'm going to use my Allen wrench and remove those, just for the fact that, see, they come off pretty easily. Just for the fact that the handlebars probably won't pack in the box very well with these things if they're left on, just because they will take up too much space in the narrow box. Now that those are removed, we'll take handlebar off the bike. What I would do, usually I'll start by at the stem, remove the center cap, the headset adjusting bolt with the cap, and put that aside. Then we're going to loosen the stem itself from the steer tube or the fork. And pull that off just like that. Also, if you have a stem that's easily removable, this one is not. I would have to remove the grips and the shifter and the brake lever, so I'm not going to go through all that. But I will loosen this bolt, the handlebar clamp bolt, so the stem is free to move around and I can reposition it if I need to. I'll just leave it loose like that. Go ahead for the time being and let the handlebars hang down by the cables. I'm going to go ahead and remove these headset spacers. At this time, this is where you want to grab a couple of zip ties. You may choose to put the stem cap back on and thread the bolt in a little bit, just so the fork doesn't drop out of the bike when you pick the front end up. But I'm going to leave it off, and I'm going to put a zip tie on here, which should secure it just enough so that doesn't happen. The reason I'm going to leave the headset spacers off with the stem cap is we don't want those things to possibly fall off, rattle around, loosen even more, and fall off in the box during shipping, during transition. Okay, I've gone as far as I'm going to go with the partial disassembly of this bike. What we're going to do now is wrap the frame to protect the finish. Now, as you see on the floor here, I've gone ahead and I've cut several cardboard strips out of an old cardboard box, and that's what we're going to use to wrap and protect the frame. Since I didn't have enough packaging material that came in this box from the bike that was originally in it, so I went ahead and kind of made my own. One note I'd like to make here when wrapping the bike is pay particular attention to the left side or the non-drive side of the bike. The right-hand side doesn't need that much protection when packing a bike this way, but the left side does, which you'll see why in a moment. So I'm going to just go ahead and start to take these and wrap the bike with it. Just put one on the frame like that. Grab some tape, or you can use a zip tie. I'm short on zip ties right now, so I'm just going to use packing tape. And we are going to basically just wrap the frame with cardboard as such. Okay, I've got the bike all wrapped and protected here. Notice I've got the left-hand crank arm wrapped, as well as the left side of the frame. I didn't really need to do the right side, as you'll see here in a second. What we're going to do now is go ahead and secure the front wheel with the rest of the bike. Okay, the next thing you want to do is position the crank arms of the bike in like a 130, 730 position as they would appear on a clock, just like you see here. Now we're going to take our front wheel and put it up against the bike on the left-hand side. What we're going to do is the crank arm that we wrapped, and this is why we wrapped it, it goes inside the wheel, up against the hub to the center of the wheel like so. This is why we protected the left side of the bike so the tire or any part of the wheel doesn't scratch the paint job or the finish. Now that the wheel is in place, I'm going to take a few zip ties here. If you have long ones, that's really great. I don't. And we're just going to zip tie the tire itself, the wheel and the tire, to the frame. Once at the top tube, and once somewhere near the back of the frame, around the seat stay or the brake area, rear brake area is fine. And go ahead and tighten those zip ties down really good so that the wheel doesn't have the ability to move around and scratch stuff up. You can test that by kind of grabbing the wheel. It's going to move a little bit, but that's fine. That's good enough. One thing I forgot to point out, notice how the cables on this bike run along the top tube of the frame. When I wrapped it with the cardboard, I made sure that I wrapped it past the cardboard underneath the cables so that if there's any movement here, these cables cannot scratch the finish on the top tube. You know, some bikes obviously will have cable routing along the down tube. Pretty much the same thing. I always try to make sure that I protect the frame's finish from any possibility of the cables rubbing on the frame and scratching the finish.